Thank you so much. Okay, let me share my screen and here. So guys, can you all see my screen? All good? All right, thank you so much guys for being here, and hi to everyone, and thank you, and I'm very glad to see so many of you guys are interested in the area of forensic accounting, and it's a growing area and it's something that we all should be aware of. So I will start off this session, okay, by introducing what is white collar crime all about, okay. And see, because we forensic accountants, we are called white collar CSIs. Okay, so why are we called white collar CSI? Because we deal with white collar crime. So it's very important for us to understand what is this white collar crime, and we will deduce the term from white collar crime. We will deduce it to fraud, specifically to occupational fraud, and we will go through some elements of fraud, like what is this occupational fraud, and types of occupational fraud, and then we will dive in and we will see what are the roles of forensic accountants, and we will go into some terms like fraud diamond and fraud prevention. Okay, so this would be the flow of the session today, and please do feel free to unmute and ask questions. You can ask questions in the chat box. I'll be very happy to answer your questions. Okay, and before we start this session, as a small audio that I would like to listen, I would like you guys to listen. So please listen carefully. Guys, you're all right. Any idea where is this? What soundtrack is this? Anyone? Have you guys heard this soundtrack before? Anyone? Anyone? CSI. Very good. So basically, we forensic accountants, we are called the white collar CSI. So why are we called the white collar CSI? So to know that, it is very important for us to know what is white collar crime. Okay. See, when we say white collar crime, it is basically a crime committed by people in the status, all right, is in the status of in the occupation. Okay, so it is not a crime committed by it is not, I would say, it's not a violent crime. It is not a physical assault, murder. When we say crime, what comes in our mind is murder, physical assault and things like that. But white collar crime is something that is committed by those in the upper level in the status. All right, so let's look at this small picture here. So you can see this man with gun and with mask and all that going to a bank and robbing a bank. And at the same time, you can see an executive here with good coat and with a cigar and just walking away with a bunch of money and just coolly saying amateur and walking away. So this picture clearly explains what is a white collar crime. So it's a crime committed by those in the upper level on the occupation. So white collar crime is, I would say, this is an umbrella term. So under white collar crime, there are few types of crime. For example, investment scam. Okay, I'm sure you guys have heard about some of the investment scams, like come, let's invest in me, and you invest 10,000, you're gonna get return 20,000, something like that. And this schemes like Ponzi schemes, all right, where the first investors, for example, put in 10,000, okay, and they will find the second investor. They will use the money from the second investor to pay the first investors, like they will get monthly returns, something like that. It will be like a pyramid. and then the third investors, they will use the money to pay the second investor. It goes on, and suddenly they just disappear. Even in Malaysia, we've seen so many cases. I personally see few cases where uh people trusted the investment, spend their money, and then they end up with nothing. So always, if you want to invest in something, guys, do check out with the Bank Negara Malaysia website. They have a clear guidelines and a list of trustable investments. All right. Then under white collar crime, we also have money laundering. So whenever I explain about money laundering, I will give this example of a washing machine. Okay. Money laundering does what a washing machine does. It cleans. Basically, money laundering is when you maybe the person has the dirty money from any illegal activity. They clean the money so that it can be used in the financial system. Okay. It is also a white collar crime. Okay, because let's say the person have 10,000 worth of dirty money. They will try to use multiple methods. Smurfing. You guys have seen the cartoon Smurf. They will break the money and launder it around in the financial system. So money laundering is a huge topic, and it is a crime that is, despite regulations and despite so many sanctions and all that, it is still there. Not only in Malaysia, but it is a worldwide problem, money laundering. Okay, and when we talk about white collar crime, we also have embezzlement. Embezzlement is basically stealing when the management like CEO and CFO steals. Okay, see, they don't call them stealing because they are called embezzlement, because they are white collar crimes in the sense that they know how to conceal it. So when they know how to conceal it, it's called as embezzlement. And under white collar crime, we have frauds like financial statement fraud. Okay, manipulate the financial statement and take back some money home. So all this fraud. And under white collar crime, we have broad category of fraud. Okay, so when we say fraud, so I'm going to break it down what is fraud. But usually people think that white collar crime is a non-violent crime. Of course, it's a non-violent crime, but people have this misconception that it is victimless crime, because they feel that there's no blood, there's no victim, in the sense of, they feel that. But actually, white collar crime is not a victimless crime. It leaves a lot of victim. For example, if it's an investment scam, a single scam can destroy a company. A single scam can destroy the reputation of the company. It can destroy a lot of people relying on the company. It can devastate families, money. So it is not a victimless crime. It is a very big crime with leaves a magnitude of impact. So that is where we come in as forensic accountants, and we are the CSI for white collar crime. So basically, we investigate white collar crimes. Okay, so when we talk about crime and white collar crime, we deduce it to fraud. All right. So fraud is one part of white collar crime, and as forensic accountants, one of the main case that we always deal with is fraud case. So fraud, the main element of fraud is deception. Okay, where someone knowingly misuse the trust for their personal gain. And when we talk about fraud, there are two types where the fraud can be committed. One is fraud for the company. When someone do something bad, okay, for the company. For example, let's say the company is going bad. Maybe the company is losing money, or the company is losing sales and all that. So this CEO want the CEO wants some financial help. All right. So what the CEO does is he manipulated the financial statement to make sure that the financial statement looks good. The liquidity is good, so that the banks will give loan for the company. So it is a fraud. The victim here is the bank. It is a fraud, but this is fraud for the company. That's the difference. And there's another type of fraud, which is fraud, okay, is fraud against the company. So fraud against the company is most common one, where the victim is the company itself. So when an employee is stealing money, all right, or where the employee is stealing inventory or misusing anything of the company, that is fraud against the company. All right. And when we talk about fraud, it can be committed by person internally or and externally. So internally means the fraud is committed by those in the organization itself, the CEO, the CFO, the management, or the employees, anyone inside. And external would be the third party, the vendors or the suppliers or anything. So this is a little branch of fraud for the company and against the company. And we're going to look into occupational fraud. See, occupational fraud is fraud committed by an organization employee. Okay, so occupational fraud is committed by those working in the company. If you can see the sneaky fella here, he's working in the company and he's doing something, and this is called occupational fraud. So occupational fraud is when employee of the organization committing fraud. All right. So we also call occupational fraud as employee fraud, guys. And what do we forensic accountant do? We do this. Can anyone guess what is this? When you see this picture, an Oreo with a cup of milk, what comes in your mind? Anybody? You can give the answer in the chat. Anyone? What is happening here? There's some milk. There is a cookie. What is happening here? Soak. Not really. Deep. Correct. That's good. Deep. So basically, what is happening here is the cookie is being dipped in the milk, right? So this is what we forensic accountants do. D, okay, my slide is not moving. D is for detect, I is for investigate, and P is for prevent. DIP, not RIP, guys. DIP, dip. So as forensic accountants, we detect, we investigate, and we prevent fraud. So today I'll be explaining a little bit how do we do this, how do we detect, how do we investigate, and how do we prevent fraud. Okay, guys? So we are in occupational fraud, and I'm going to stress more on occupational fraud because as forensic accountant, majority case that comes to us is usually on occupational fraud. Okay, so ACFE, Association of Chartered Fraud Examiners, all right, they are as an association for all the fraud examiner. They have classified this occupational fraud into three main areas: corruption, asset misappropriation, and financial statement fraud. So corruption, I'm sure you guys have heard the term corruption so many times before. So when come to employee corruption for the in the organization, it can come in the form, for example, bribery, okay, where maybe the employee take in some money or take in some benefit in return for a favor against the company. For example, he take money and say, I'll give you the secret of my company. Or you give me money and I'll give all the contract to your company, even though the company's products could be bad, not a good quality product, but the contracts are given just because of under table money going in. So this is corruption, which is committed by an employee against the company. And we also have financial statement fraud committed by employee. See, financial statement fraud, usually employee in the low tier is very difficult for them to commit it. Is usually committed by those in the management, like CEOs, CFOs, and all that. Why they do that? Perhaps they want to prove that, look, I can bring in more sales for the organization. Look, I can bring in more revenue and you need to give me more bonus. To prove that they are doing good and to get more bonus, they can manipulate the figures in the financial statement. So when they do that, it is called financial statement fraud. And the most common type of employee fraud, 86% of cases that forensic accountants investigate are asset misappropriation. Okay, see, asset misappropriation is when people who are entrusted to manage the asset steals from it. Okay, that is called asset misappropriation. And this asset misappropriation also branched out into four main areas. Okay, but you'll be thinking, Miss, why are you talking about types of fraud? You'll be thinking, why are we learning? Why do we know? Why do we need to know about this fraud? How are they committed and all that? See, one work of a forensic, the major work of a forensic accountant is when we sign in the engagement letter with our client, okay, we investigate fraud for them. Um, Clients will come to us, and clients will actually don't know what happened in the organization. Client comes to us and they will be brief, they will tell us what happened in the sense of the symptoms. For example, they tell us that, look, my products has been selling very not well, but my sales is not increasing. Maybe that's one symptom they tell you. Or they tell you that every time my product, there's are cases where they come and tell that, hey, my product is listed in Lazada or Shopee, but I never put it there in Lazada or Shopee, things like that. Okay. So clients will come to us and they usually will tell us symptoms. So we as forensic accountant, our work is to listen to the symptoms. Okay, these are the symptoms. And we need to come up with hypotheses of what could have happened. So based on this symptom, perhaps embezzlement could have happened, perhaps investor stealing. We need to come up with hypotheses. After we come up with hypothesis, we will find evidence, we will investigate to test the hypothesis. That is how forensic accountants work. Because when we see clients won't be sure on what type of fraud happened. They only have the red flags, they only have the symptoms. So as a forensic accountant, it's very important to understand how a particular fraud is committed. So if we understand how the fraud is committed, we will know how to find evidence to prove it. If we don't understand how it is committed, we will be stuck because we don't know how it could have been committed, right? So that's one issue. So as forensic accountant, and also for students who are interested in forensic accounting, it is very important to understand how each fraud are committed. So under asset misappropriation, we have scheming and larceny. Okay. So scheming and larceny, I'll go to scheming first. Scheming is a very a fraud which is very difficult to be detected because we call it as off-book scheme. Okay, scheming. Let me give you guys an example. Let's say this person is a cashier in a stationery shop, all right? And some man walks in, buy a pen and gives 3 ringgit for the pen, and the person walks out, all right? When you buy a pen, you don't ask for a receipt and you just, it's just for a pen, okay? You just walk up, all right? So the cashier, without recording it, just puts the money in the pocket. That is called skimming. Skimming is basically stealing, but stealing without leaving any audit trail. Okay, that is why skimming is usually very difficult to be detected. But we can prevent it. Usually, organizations try to prevent skimming by having like policies like make sure the customers ask for receipt, or by having policies like each receipt you will get a sticker, 10 sticker you will get a present, something like that. So it encourages customer to ask for receipt. At the same time, it prevents skimming. So in business, okay, in reality, the owner of the business won't always be in the shop, won't always be in the business environment. They have to go out, sometimes they have few branches, all right. Maybe I have a branch in KL, I have a branch in Ipoh, I have a branch in Kedah. So skimming is possible when the person has employees all over. So it's important to prevent it. And it is different from larceny because larceny is an on-book scheme. Means that it is recorded, all right? Means that they scanned it and it's recorded. But larceny is basically the employee taking money from the cash counter and putting in the pocket. Larceny can be detected with the proper check. Like if let's say the supermarket, there's a cashiers and sometimes cashiers change. We go to Tesco and Aeon, you see cashiers, they always change, right? So there's an option for that employee to steal the money. So it can be prevented. Larceny can be prevented by having a proper control and a proper monitoring and proper checking. All right. And another type of asset misappropriation is billing and invoicing scheme. Okay, billing. So this billing scheme, it attacks the purchasing function itself. Okay. I'll give you one example. Just pretend that, let's assume that there's this employee, okay. She's in the purchasing department for this very large organization. Okay, maybe this organization manufactures laptops, for example. So this employee is the one in charge of billing. He pays all the vendor who sends all the laptop chips and all that. So this employee, what she does, this is a real story. It happened few times. Okay, every time he pays the vendor, he pays extra. Okay, so let's say the invoice is only 200, she'll pay 300, okay, paid extra. So what the vendors will do, the vendors will refund back, right? Hey, look, it's 200, you will pay 300, they will refund. So what is employee do? The refund didn't record in the financial statement, take the refund and put in the pocket. So that is called billing scheme. There's few methods can be done. I'm just giving you one example of billing scheme. So if the purchasing department does not have a proper control, this kind of scheme is something which is can be committed. Okay, we might think that we have proper control, we have proper system, proper maybe softwares to prevent it, but at the end of the day, any softwares, any prevention can be overridden, right? So what the preparators will do, they will look where is the weakness and they can commit this kind of billing scheme. And we also have under asset misappropriation, payroll. Okay, for example, they come up an employee is not working in the organization, but he just puts in the name and then the account number, he puts his own account number, and every time he gets salary, he will get double the salary. It's possible when the company's control is weak, payroll scheme is possible, and expenses reimbursement scheme. This asset misappropriation under expenses reimbursement, this is very, very common. Okay, like especially if the person is working in sales and the person need to travel a lot, right? Usually the employees will go travel and they will come back and they will submit the bills to the accounting department, and the accounting department will give money based on the receipt. Well, sometimes they will claim additional expenses. You know, the hotel could be only for 300 ringgit, but they ask for the 500 ringgit receipt and they claim extra. So all these asset misappropriation, all these are fraud committed by employees by misusing the trust that they put into them. Okay, but now like expenses reimbursement, we do have controls. You know, let's say the employee is traveling, rather than let the employee book the own hotel and get the receipt, you can always use Trivago booking to prevent it. But again, how many people knows how to prevent the fraud? How many of them are aware that this kind of fraud can happen? Because usually everybody's mindset is that, oh, this one is impossible, won't happen. Or the receipt is there, I'm just giving what's in the receipt, all right? But everything can be manipulated. These schemes might feel that, oh, this won't happen, but all this can happen. So that is why we need forensic accountant to investigate, to detect, and to prevent. All right. See, this is a PricewaterhouseCoopers survey. I'm sure most of you know who are PricewaterhouseCooper. All right. They are a very well-known audit firm. Okay. So they always do this global survey. Okay. So when they did a global economic crime and fraud survey, so they did this survey for Malaysian company in 2020. So it said that since 2018, the incident of fraud in Malaysia remains high, where in comparison to Southeast Asian country showed a decrease. And in Malaysia, right, there's another survey by ACFE mentions that we have pandemic and most of us are working from home, and this culture where we don't go to office. Despite all this, the number of employee fraud scheme has actually increased, not decreased, it's increased. All right. And 43% of Malaysian organization experience any fraud. It could be fraud or it could be any economic fraud within the last 24 months. So the survey shows that the fraud is still there, and top most impactful incident of fraud. Impactful means that the incident of fraud really left a lot of huge losses, I would say. So the top most impactful incident of fraud experienced by Malaysian in the last year is these four types of fraud. All right. Asset misappropriation, 16%, corruption, customer fraud, 20%, and also cybercrime. Okay. Cybercrime is slowly increasing in numbers. Okay. The type of fraud committed cybercrime. And we will always say that, look, we have so much of system, firewall, walls to that you can't even come into my company system. But again, when we are talking about fraud, so fraud, when someone is committing it, they know how to override the prevention. So that is why engaging in a forensic accountant, understanding fraud, understanding how fraud is committed is very important. Because usually people, they know, okay, fraud, this is fraud, but they don't know how it is committed. So it's important to go back to the basic and understand how each fraud can be committed. And if you look at the statistic, all right, who was the main perpetrator of this incident? If you see in Malaysia, 33% of this fraud is committed by internal perpetrators, basically people inside the organization, and 35% is collusion between internal and external actor. So basically, without the help of an internal employee, it's very difficult to commit the fraud. And in Malaysia, the number is quite scary. 33 plus 35 is 68% of internal employees were involved in fraud. All right. Um, and how was the incident initially detected? And if you can see here, the highest number, 18%, goes to suspicious activity monitoring, which is good. It means that the management monitors any suspicious activity and they found out that, okay, look, fraud is happening. For example, maybe the management see that, hey, how come this guy driving a very luxurious car, looking at the person's salary, this car is impossible. So suspicious. Or this guy does not go for any vacation, he controls all the documents. So when the management suspects and monitoring suspicious activity, some of the fraud has been detected. All right. But if you see tip off, in 2018, okay, 23% of fraud has been discovered because of a tip off. If you can see that, right? Wait, I can't. Okay. Now my 23% of fraud has been discovered through tip off. So tip off means basically an employee in that organization itself reports about the fraud. Okay, but this number has drastically dropped in 2020 to only 4%. Maybe because we are working from home and tip off is impossible because we don't know what our colleagues are doing. But again, this is 2020. We started working from home in 2020. So we don't know yet why, but usually tip off is always, even in America and countries like that, tip off, whistleblowing are always the high number. I mean that they are the most common method how a fraud is detected. So let's say someone is committing a fraud in an organization, another person will tip off him, that's how the fraud is detected. But this number has been slightly dropping. Okay, so we need to investigate this why. Could be because of pandemic, people working from home, could be other reason. But currently, suspicious activity monitoring is leading. This is a main method how fraud has been detected. Okay. So these are some statistics by this PwC. And how did organization respond to the incident? So when there is a fraud, okay, fine, this happened. So what organizations do? It's good. 59% of organization, they conduct an investigation and fact finding. See, nowadays the trend, companies are already engaging in internal forensic accountants. Banks, for example, banks have their own fraud team. They will have their own fraud investigation team, and we have external forensic accountants to if they don't have an internal team, they will directly go to the external team and explain the symptoms and ask them to come and investigate. So this is a career. Forensic accountant is a scope, a career, or this is in demand currently, because as forensic accountants, we not only investigate fraud, we also detect if there's a fraud, and another part of our work is also to prevent fraud. Okay, so this is how organizations respond to the incident of fraud. And as who are these forensic accountants? I keep telling you guys fraud and forensic accountant do this, do that, and all that. But who are forensic accountants? So basically we are, okay, accountants. Of course, we are also accountants and we are also auditor. But what differentiates us is that we combine our accounting knowledge with investigation skill to investigate fraud based on red flags raised by clients or victims. Okay, so again, when we investigate, okay, before we sign the engagement, it means that clients are the victims, come to us, explain what happened. All right, basically they won't know who commit the fraud. If they know, They don't need forensic accountants, right? But sometimes they know, but they don't have evidence, all right? So they come to us, they'll explain what happened, they will explain the symptoms, all right? And our work is to combine our accounting knowledge and with our investigation skill, we will investigate this fraud. So once we identified the perpetrator, forensic accountants also provide litigation support to take action against the perpetrator who commits the crime. See, one thing that differentiates us between auditors and accountant is that the litigation knowledge that we have. Knowledge of the courtroom sets the forensic accountant apart from a typical accountant. Because a forensic accountant, when we investigate, we always have this in mind that this evidence will be brought to court. When we investigate in a mindset that this case will be presented in the courtroom. So as forensic accountant, we need to know the procedures of courtroom and we need to have some litigation knowledge. Based on ACFE, again, Association of Certified Fraud Examiner, 81% cases investigated and presented by forensic accountant in court resulted either judgment in favor of the victim or settlement agreement. So it means that with a forensic accountant, there's 81% chances of winning a case. That is really very good. Okay. So that is what we forensic accountants do. And again, if you can see the flag, the red flag, clients will come to us with these red flags. All right. They will tell us only the symptoms. It is us who need to understand it, theorize it, making hypotheses and test it. Okay. So it is very important to have forensic accountant. Again, we are the one who investigate these cases, all right, and also we prevent these cases from happening, all right. uh I will just show you what one of the methods how can we do investigation, all right. There's this method called Benford law, all right? I'm not sure whether you guys have heard about Benford law before. Benford law is basically this is a digital analysis technique, but you can use this technique by just using a simple Excel sheet. So this Benford law, it is based on occurrences of number. This law says that Benford, this technique says that the occurrences of digit the digit one is always higher compared to digit two. At digit 3, 4, 5, 6 means that percentage of occurrence of one is way higher than number 9. So let's say you have a piece of Excel sheet with you with a lot of data, okay, vendors, how much sales you make and all that in an Excel sheet. You can try at home, all right. You just take the whole data, all right, in the Excel. You do the formula in the Excel, you just put sama dengan equals, all right, put a bracket. You extract the left number, the first number. Okay, let's say 586. So you extract number 5. 284, you extract number 2, the first number. 1340, so number 1, the first number. You extract, okay, so the amount of data you have, let's say you have 10 transactions, you extract all the number, and based on Benford law, the occurrence of number 1 has to be higher than the other number in a normal set of routine data. So if that happened, based on Benford law, that data is a data without any manipulation. So that's one method that we can use. Of course, sometimes it could be a bit subjective, but forensic accountant, we use this kind of tool, this kind of method to investigate a particular fraud. Okay, we have few methods. You know, sometimes we observe, sometimes we come up with genograms, sometimes we do vulnerability check. Few methods. So it's this is what we do. We investigate the fraud, and also not only that, we prevent fraud. So mostly people what they say is that forensic accountant, they just come in when there is fraud. So that is a big misconception, because the job of forensic accountant is not to only investigate fraud, but also to prevent fraud. So they design the environment, they design the system so that there will be minimal fraud occurring. So that's what forensic accountants do. Okay. So when it comes about forensic accountant, what are the main area of competence needed for a forensic accountant? So what we need, okay? So these are all the skills that we need to be a forensic accountant. Not only this, of course, there are a lot of other skills needed, But these are the main skill that needed for a forensic accountant. So the first one, accounting. We are forensic accountants, so we need to have accounting knowledge. Okay. So forensic, the word forensic itself, it means basically finding evidence. There are so many forensic. There are forensic pathologies, forensic blood spatter analysis, uh, where they analyze how the blood is spattered, and they will come up with some crime scene investigation. So there's so many area of forensic. We are forensic accountant, so it means we are specialized in accounting, and we definitely need to have investigation skills, how to conduct an investigation, and definitely audit skills. All right. How, because audit and forensic accounting, it is not same, but some elements of audit, like analytical procedures, how the audits are conducted, is necessary for forensic accountant, so they must have audit skill. So the fourth picture here, someone is looking in person's mind. Can anybody guess what skill is that? Anyone? What skill is the fourth one? Anybody? No idea. So the fourth skill here, okay, the mind reading is criminology skill. All right. So as a forensic accountant, it is very important to understand criminology. So criminology is basically the mind of people committing crime. Because when we do investigation, we also find evidence. We interview suspects. We see the suspect. We will talk to them. We will communicate to them. We'll ask them questions how this could have happened. So we need, as a forensic accountant, we need the skill to understand what's in the criminal mind. All right. So criminology is another area which is very important. Another criteria which is very important for a forensic accountant. And of course, you see the last picture there, it is someone in the court. A forensic accountant must have litigation knowledge, means that they need to know what happens in the courtroom, how to present an evidence in front of the judge. So these are the main area of competency needed for a forensic accountant. Okay. Okay, and let's answer this question. Are forensic accountants and auditors the same? I always have this question. I mean, I always have people asking me this question. Hey, look, you're talking about forensic accountants. Aren't this the same thing and auditors do? I have so many people ask me this few times, what is the difference? You guys do the same thing. We don't do the same thing. The answer is no. Are they the same? We are not the same. See, accountants and forensic accountants and auditors both have different purpose. I've been an auditor, I've been a forensic accountant. We serve different purpose. Okay. See, the work of an auditor is to examine financial statement and to ensure that the accounting standards are followed. All right? And then they come up with an opinion whether the financial statements are true and fair, and whether the financial positions are true and fair. That's what an auditor does. But a forensic accountant, their role is mostly to prevent fraud. They analyze their number. Okay. After analyzing number, okay, they will come up with assumption what could have happened, find evidence to test the hypothesis, and forensic accountants uncover possible fraud to be presented in the courtroom. So the work of an auditor and forensic accountants are totally different. See, auditors, they have standards to follow. I'm sure MIA have already come up with this standard that fraud and error included in auditor standard also. But then auditors, they have a checklist. They come in, they vouch, they do invoicing and all that. They have like a standard of checklist to be ticked to ensure that financial statement is good. But we forensic accountant, when we go in a crime scene, I mean that I'm calling a fraud as a crime scene here. When we go in, clients will tell us symptoms and we work based on the symptoms that the client tell us. So after client talk to us, sometimes we come up with a hypothesis. Sometimes we'll find evidence first and then interview the suspect. or sometimes we want to know more. So we will go for interviewing the suspects, then go and find evidence. All right. See, auditors also find evidence, but they are different. When a forensic accountant find evidence, that evidence has to be accepted in court. All right. When forensic accountants find evidence, it has to be admissible in the court. It has to be authenticated in the court. So we serve a different purpose. Forensic accountants and auditor. If you want to know more about the difference between the role, you can ask me guys later. I can briefly explain the difference between forensic accountant and also auditors. Okay. Here, let's look here. So normally fraud. Hiya, impossible to be committed lah. No one will do this. Definitely, that's what becomes in our mind. Fraud. In my company, definitely this is not happening. Impossible. This is mindset of most people. Most of business owner, especially if we look into small medium enterprises, most business owner, they have this mindset that fraud is something impossible. Let me give you a simple example, guys. Okay. This is a picture of an nasi lemak. Okay, I would just like to attract your attention to this example, guys. Everybody loves nasi lemak. Okay, I had once now, right? So let's imagine, let's just don't talk about pandemic situation. Before pandemic, where people go to work in the morning and quickly go to the shop and grab a nasi lemak and they just go back to work. All right. So imagine, let's say you have the person have a restaurant and two cashiers in the restaurant, and every time people come and buy the nasi lemak, definitely they don't want a receipt, right? You're rushing to work, you're rushing to school, you're rushing to tuition, and you just go grab a nasi lemak, pay 2 ringgit, 3 ringgit, 4 ringgit, and just walk off. That's what you do. You don't ask for receipt. It won't take long for a cashier there to do skimming or to do a licensing. Okay, it won't take long for the cashier there or person working in the restaurant. When he packing the nasi lemak, he only packed 5, but he report to the boss that he only packed 3. 2 nasi lemak he sold it and then he put the money in the pocket. Can happen. All right, in a simple restaurant this can happen. In a big organization, fraud can happen. We may think that the controls are good, impossible for skimming to happen, impossible for billing scheme to happen. But how sure we are the controls are good? Have we tested the control? Until the fraud discovered, we won't know it can be happen. So fraud is not something impossible. It is possible, and it is always important for all organizations to be prepared. Nothing harm in being vigilant, in being prepared for fraud. Okay, because company loses billions and some company millions to billions. Like, company loses a lot of money because of fraud. And typically when this kind of frauds are committed, right, it won't be detected very fast. Some fraud, it takes about 2 years, typically 2 years, like 14 months to 2 years for a fraud to be detected. So we don't want to lose money for fraud because of fraud. So nothing harm. It is advisable for organization to call in a forensic accountant to assess the risk of the company for fraud. Whether they are healthy, whether the company's controls are healthy, whether is there any room for fraud, is there any loopholes where fraud can be committed. So it's very important. Okay. Now, we have learned a little bit. If you guys have any question about types of fraud, how it is committed, what a forensic accountant does, you want to know more about what type of investigation we do, examples, you can always give me the questions in the chat box. I'll be very happy to answer your question, guys. Okay. Now I would like to skip a little bit into a different dimension. I would like to explain a little bit on fraud diamond. Okay. See, this fraud diamond, okay, originally it was fraud triangle. Okay, originally it was fraud triangle. There's this researcher called Donald Cressy in 1953, if I'm not mistaken. He did some research, all right, and he went to the prison. He interviewed so many people in the prison, and he found out the reason why fraud is committed. And he come up with this theory of fraud triangle, and it's expanded to fraud diamond now. So what he said, these are the reason why fraud is committed. Okay, and it's important when we know the reason, we know how to prevent it. So the first reason is opportunity. Fraud is committed when there is an opportunity for an employee to commit the fraud. Okay, for example, lack of control. When there is lack of control, people take advantage of it. Like the nasi lemak shop just now, right? There's lack of control, all right? Means that there's very less people working there and he's the only cashier there. So when there's lack and control, people can take advantage of it and commit a fraud. That's one reason why fraud can be committed. Okay, opportunity. Second, pressure. All right, pressure can be financial pressure or it can be non-financial pressure. All right, maybe the person have a debt, he need to pay his car loan, school loan, home loan. All right, and because of that he is motivated to commit a crime. Not only that, sometimes there's also non-financial pressure, like the boss keep giving too much of KPIs to men. You must make 100%, you must make 100% sales, you must come up with this kind of sales and all that. So this kind of pressure will actually lead fraud to be committed by an employee. These are some reasons why employee commit fraud. And third one, rationalization. Okay, see, rationalization means that when an employee commit fraud, all right, they morally justify it in their mind. For them that is the right thing to do. Now I'll give you an example. Maybe this employee is working in the company for 20 years and he didn't get any benefit, he was not really appreciated, so he feels that, okay, fine, I will just steal money from the company, because he feel morally it is justified. Or he believes that I am just taking, I'm just borrowing, I'll return it back with hard work. This kind of morally they justify that this fraud is ethical. That's one thing they do. And capability is having necessary traits, means that the person is capable, intelligent. If I want to commit an accounting fraud, I need to know how to play around with my debits and credits. I need to know how to play around with my assets and liabilities. So these four factors, okay, these four elements makes it possible for a fraud to be committed. Okay, it motivates, it push, it gives a reason for a fraud to be committed. All right, so before we move on, guys, any questions you have before I move on? Anything, any area that I can help you guys, justify to you guys? Okay, I have here in the chat. Is this possible for a company to call in a forensic accountant just for prevention? There is no symptoms of fraud, but the company just call for investigation, want to prevent it. Yes, it is possible and it is advisable. Okay, because we always want to be sure. All right, we don't want to take the risk, because as I mentioned just now, guys, each fraud cases, right, the losses can be millions to billions. All right, it can be and fraud does not only brings in financial loss. When a fraud happened, okay, sometimes when the fraud came into light, the company's reputation is tarnished. Sometimes employee losing job because the company can't deal with the amount of loss due to the fraud. And reputation, another one important area. So why wait? Why we want to wait for the symptoms to prevail? Why we want to do that? It's good to call in a forensic accountant to, like, just check on overall health. See, sometimes you go for a medical checkup in a hospital, right? Sometimes you are not sick, but you're advisable to go at least 1 year once. Okay, you are advised to go and take blood tests. You are advised to check all, just to ensure that you don't have any sickness. So, and also to prevent from happening. So same, forensic accountant do the same thing, but they are like a health checker for organization to ensure that there's no fraud in the organization. Okay. All right. Thank you. Please do, guys, if you have any question, please do ask me. And I will brief a little bit here. Concealment method. Okay. See, these are how fraudster, all right, they will try to hide the fraud. Concealment method. This is by a survey. So let's say a fraudster committed something, the perpetrator stole money or stole something from the organization. Okay, how they hide it. Okay, 40% of employees are capable, are in the position to actually create fraudulent physical documents. Okay, this is very dangerous. Okay, for example, in the billing scheme that in the earlier slide just now, all right, it's very dangerous where he can actually create a fake document, remember the example in the earlier slide I gave you guys, that billing scheme where the perpetrator can actually come up with own like refunds and all that, right? So when the boss asks, the perpetrator may just come up with their own receipt and say that, oh no, the billing is really for 300, but actually the billing was only for 200. No, I'll explain the situation again, maybe you're confused. So billing scheme fraud, right? So let's say this man is in the procurement department, so he's in charge of paying back to the vendor. All right, sometimes larger company, they have so much of vendor, the CEO and CFO, it's difficult for them to monitor each vendor, especially sometimes the vendors have similar names, A and Z Sandra Berhad, A and D Sandra Berhad, A and E Sandra Berhad, with similar names. Operator can actually come up with own fake company, A and C Sandra Berhad, and being paying to the company is actually his own company, but he just fake it. It's called shell company. Shell companies are like fake companies, all right? The proprietor is the purchasing manager. He can bill while paying all the vendors. He also pay 100 ringgit for his own company. Possible, okay? If there's no proper check, this is possible. Or sometimes the perpetrator can pay extra to the vendor and the vendor refund the money. The perpetrator does not disclose it and put the money in the pocket. Also possible. And when the boss's check is difficult to be detected because the perpetrator created fraudulent physical documents already. So this is how perpetrator, and also 36% they alter the physical document. So this is how perpetrator can actually conceal the fraud. 27% of them, they alter electronic documents, means that I'm very sure you guys know everything is now electronic documents, right? Like everything in the system. So the perpetrator can alter it by logging into the system and alter it. And sometimes nobody, there's no suspicious activity here because they know they always work in the system. So this is some method where concealment method used by the fraudster. 26% of them create fraudulent electronic documents. So only 12% did not involve any attempt to conceal the fraud. But most of the fraudsters, when they commit the fraud, they know they are doing it. It's not negligence. See, negligence is different, fraud is different. Negligence is when you're doing it, but you don't know you are doing it. That means that you're doing it wrongly. That's negligence. This is fraud, means that you have an intention of cheating. You have an intention of getting the gain, misusing the trust. That's where fraud happens. So definitely the fraudster will conceal it. So it makes it more difficult for management and for the higher authorities to actually discover these frauds too. Okay. So see, when we talk about fraud, fraud prevention is very important. See, as a forensic accountants, again, we not only come up with fraud investigation. One part of our job is to investigate fraud, but it is not the only thing that we do. We investigate fraud. That's of course when client calls us. Again, clients will tell us all the symptoms. We come up with an hypothesis. We find evidence, and we have few methods. We come up with. Okay, remember guys, this chart I tell you, this diamond, we can actually investigate by using this fraud diamond. Okay, we can develop a vulnerability chart, we call it. Okay, we write opportunity. Just imagine a chart, a table. You write opportunity, rationalization, pressure, capability. List down all the suspects in the company. Let's say the company have only 10 employees. List down all the names. Listen to the symptoms that the client tells. So let's say the client is telling cash has been decreasing. So something is wrong in the cash department. So list down all the suspect in the cash department, the names of the suspect, S1, S2, S3. Find whether the suspect have opportunity to commit fraud or not. Does he have pressure? Does he have rationalization? Does he have capability? Okay, we have to find, we have to investigate. So by drawing this vulnerability chart is one method that we do to investigate fraud. After we do the vulnerability chart, we will move on to physical evidence gathering. And when we gather evidence, we will gather accordingly to ensure that it is admissible in the court. All right. See, uh, fraud investigation is one equation of our job, okay? But there's another one equation of our job, which is the client going to report the fraud, okay? Means if really there's a fraud, some clients still now they are not coming up to report the fraud because they are worried about the reputation. But things are changing. Nowadays, clients are very upfront, so they want to make sure that this fraud is prevented. They don't want it to be repeating again. So they are coming up and they are reporting the fraud. It's very important. If you don't report the fraud, employees would be like, oh, I do, and nothing happened. So more employees will do it. It's like motivation for them. So it's always important to report. So when the clients decide to report the fraud, we as a forensic accountant is we will present the client in the court. We prepare the report, and in our report there's only facts, no opinions. Only facts will be presented in the report, and we go to the court, we will present it in front of the judge. That's part of our job, is called expert witness. All right. So we have a lot of roles to play. We investigate, we detect, we prevent, and we represent the client in the court. So we have a lot of skills we need. We need to have uh, reporting skill. We need to have accounting, audit, litigation, legal. So there's so many is a competence that we need to equip ourselves with. So it's very interesting actually. All right. So that's part of our job. That's what we do as far as the accountant. And when it comes to prevention, usually we use internal controls to prevent fraud. I'm not so sure how many of you are familiar with this internal control. This is called the COSO Framework of Internal Control, Committee of Sponsoring Organization. They come up with this internal control. See, when we define internal control, the definition can get very tricky. You can see an interlocking set of activities layered into normal and operating procedure. This is the definition. But basically, internal control is very simple. Activities needed to mitigate fraud means that what you need in an organization to ensure the risk of fraud is minimal. Now, I always use the word prevent fraud, mitigate fraud, minimize the risk of fraud. I don't use the word stop fraud because we like 100% stop the fraud, because sometimes I would say it's impossible because controls are there. People can override the control. So that is why actively engaging in forensic accountant, consistently checking the controls is very important. So when we talk about internal control, so briefly guys, so internal control, we have what should we do to prevent fraud. Okay, some of you might have some businesses at home, some of you might be doing a project. So always remember these 5 elements so that to ensure to minimize fraud. Okay, first, control environment. Okay, make sure the environment is fraud free. Okay, control environment, people used to think that it's very simple by having code of ethics, by having fraud free policy. It's not as simple as that. Control environment is the responsibility of the management, and if it is a listed company, the board, the shareholders, and the directors, to come up with this culture of free fraud culture. Have like speak up policy, open the door policy, so that people are comfortable in the organization and they know that the organization gives importance to integrity and to ethics, so that they know that committing fraud is something wrong. That is control and environment. And then we have assessment of risk assessment. This is what us forensic accountant do. We will do a comprehensive risk assessment, means that we will measure what are the risks of fraud in the organization. So let's say the risk, for the example, the nasi lemak shop just now, the risk is the cashier doing skimming scheme. There's a risk there. So how are we acting to the risk? Okay, we can simply give suggestions like putting CCTV, but sometimes this kind of suggestion that comes with some disadvantages. Not all employees are comfortable to work under a CCTV. Maybe in front of the door to prevent theft, possible. But some employees, they are not comfortable. Imagine I have to work with the CCTV 24 hours in front of my eye. Sometimes employees are demotivated and not comfortable. So you have to assess all that. So risk assessment, any company, they is very important for them to assess their risk of fraud at least a year once. 6 months once advisable, but at least 1 year once, go back and assess where, in which area fraud can come from. And then the third part, that control of operation activity, that is very important. Any activity like just now, the billing scheme can be committed because no one checks the employee. He's the only person in the procurement department. No one checks him, so he can commit the fraud. So it is very important to have policies like authorizations, approval. So whatever billing, it has to go through the process of CEO or the process of another manager than CEO. The more approval layer, the more authorization layer, the better. It can be expensive because and it can be time consuming, but it is one way fraud can be prevented. And sometimes companies, no, we find it very weird. Sometimes company they have all this control, but still fraud is there. Still the risk of fraud is there, and still people are manipulating it because there's no monitoring. Sometimes controls are there, SOPs, controls, procedures are there, but monitoring is minimal. When monitoring is minimal, people override the control. And when people override the controls become inefficient. So when you implement a control, when I mean control, it means that activities like all invoices has to go through the manager. Manager has to sign, go through second manager, then go to the CEO before payments are made. So something like that. So when the activities are there, it must be monitored. If you don't monitor the activity, it becomes redundant. And also accurate in communication and information. So sometimes the controls are there, but it is not communicated. So these are the fine. We have to ensure that the whatever control, whatever processes we bring in, communicated properly to everyone in the organization. Okay. All right. Any question, guys? You can always ask me first, and I'm going to the next part of it, fraud prevention. Okay. These are some tips, some suggestions on how fraud can be prevented. Okay. Like as I mentioned about control environment, ensure the code of conduct. Conduct is always there. Okay. Means that code of ethics. Okay, make sure that everyone know. Look, in the code of ethics usually, right, when we go to an organization to work, we always feel that it is just like a terms and condition. You know how when you want to install something, you see a terms and condition, you just tick a box, you don't read it, and you just accept it. And most organization, they have this as code of conduct also. For them, it's just like, okay, reading it, don't even read it. Oh, this is the ethics, I just throw it under my drawer and I start work. All right. So code of conduct should not be like that. Code of conduct is ethics policy, like how you should behave. It has to be embedded in the environment. For example, management always stress about it and have a training about it. Management always stress that, okay, this is what we expect from the employees. So that's one thing about code of conduct. And fraud can also be prevented by having this hotline, whistleblower hotline. Okay, whistleblower hotline sometimes, right? I know someone is to, let's say you're working in an organization, someone beside you is committing a fraud, but you don't know what to do. If you report it, it's going to be trouble for you. And maybe your manager is committing the fraud and you find it very difficult to report it. And so what companies will do is they can have this kind of hotline numbers so that employees can report fraud anonymously. So they don't have to tell their names, they don't have to tell anything. They can report what's happening anonymously. This is also called a whistleblowing policy. Okay. And you can have like reward system. Companies can create these whistleblowing policies, like have these policies prominent. Like we encourage whistleblowers. Whistleblowers are protected. If you blow a whistle, don't worry, you are protected and you will be rewarded. So this is one method. This is suitable if a company is in the very sensitive industry. So you can have whistleblower method, have a hotline. All right. So when you have a hotline, people can report it and can call it with anonymously. So have anti-fraud policies. Okay. Anti-fraud policy comes in training for employees and manager. Uh, you will be surprised sometimes someone beside you would be committing fraud and you don't realize it. So they would be maybe they're manipulating the financial system. Okay, they are manipulating the accounts. All right, maybe the refund, they be manipulating it and you don't realize it. Sometimes employees don't realize it, managers don't realize it because they don't know. So under anti-fraud policy, it is very important to train the employees. All the employees in the organization should be trained. They should go for courses like what is fraud, how frauds are committed, how the gray loopholes are found. So when they go for this training, they are aware how frauds are committed, so they can report it. And organizations can do this kind of surprise audit. Okay. Like suddenly audit one department. All right, today I want to audit cash department, today I want to audit procurement department, cash department, something like that, account receivable department. So do surprise audit frequently. Okay. And it's recommended to have a dedicated fraud department, because if it comes to employee fraud, organization can have this kind of independent fraud department, like how organizations have internal control department, they are independent, right? So they can also have an independent fraud department where any cases investigated will go under this department. Like banks nowadays, banks they already have a fraud department embedded in the organization. So any loan fraud cases, any kind of customer fraud cases, they will directly investigate, and if they need any help, they will call an external forensic accountant. And job rotation is very important. Job rotation is very simple, but it's very important. Don't let's say you have an accounting department, so you have five staff. One is in account receivable, another one is account payable, another one is in cash. Rotate their job. One thing is good for them to learn different departments job, different area of accounting. You rotate their job. So when they rotate the job, when one employee is committing fraud, when they rotate the work, they can easily found out by another employee. All right, so job rotation is something that a simple method you can use to prevent fraud in departments like billing and accounting department. Have these mandatory vacations. Usually when we see fraud cases, right, most of the perpetrators that we see, they don't go for leave. Surprisingly, they don't go for vacation, because when they go, somebody else will take over and the fraud can be discovered. So encourage, previously when I was in firms, they encourage this kind of 1 week policy. So mandatory vacation policy. So have this kind of mandatory vacation policy so the fraud can be prevented. And segregation of duty, it means that um then don't let one person do all the job. One person find the vendor, one person pay the vendor, one person check who are the vendors. Let's say you want to bank in money in the bank. Okay, so the office boy will go and bank in the money in the bank. When he comes back, he records it in the system. So that is wrong. If the office boy goes to the bank and bank in the cash, when he comes back, he need to give the slip to another person. Another person has to key in the system, and another person has to approve it. So there's a 3 layer. That's called segregation of duty. When you combine all this layer and you only let one person to do it, it encourages opportunity for fraud. So have segregation of duty in organization. And nowadays we can do background check before hiring. Okay, make sure hire right. Okay, you want to hire someone, make sure they don't have any history of fraud. Hire someone who don't have any intention of committing fraud. So hire right. All right, so these are few methods frauds can be prevented. These are only few, there are so many other methods, of only listed few methods here. So as forensic accountants, when we go in, when we investigate the case, we will analyze the health, or like how I tell you guys, like doctors do medical checkup, we will do a small fraud checkup for the organization. We will have like a checklist, and we will ensure that checklists are ticked. We will ensure that how this organization operates, because every organization is different. Some organization, they are big, so when they are big, segregation of duty is possible. Okay, they have so many staff, so they can do it. Some organizations, they are small, they only have 3 employees, and if I go and tell them, look, you need to segregate duty, they can't afford it. They can't afford to hire another employee. So when we give advisors for this kind of company, we have to give different advisors. We have to say, okay, fine, you can't segregate, maybe try job rotation, try authorization and approval, try something else. So every company is different. Okay, because company comes in so many sizes, in so many nature of businesses. So as forensic accountant, we analyze the company. All right, we look into the scenario of the company, and we give prevention idea based on that organization. So again, remember guys, BIP, a forensic accountants, they detect fraud, they investigate fraud, and they prevent fraud. So it's very important for an organization to have forensic accountant. Okay, and you will be surprised, guys. You mean some they feel that look, this fraud, small companies impossible. Like I tell you guys just now, small companies fewer than 100 employees, they are at the larger uh risk, larger loss, and they face larger losses due to occupational fraud, employee fraud, small companies, because of this, because they can't put in much prevention mechanism. Sometimes they can't come up with a proper surprise audit. They don't have anti-fraud policy. So fraud education is very important, and this is something that we have to look into and we have to work on it. All right, guys, any questions from your end? Now I'm opening the floor for questions. Anything, we can discuss it together. May I know how to be a forensic accountant in Malaysia, and where does a forensic accountant work? Okay, to be a forensic accountant, as I mentioned just now, guys, you need to have accounting skills. Okay, so you can do accounting courses to be a forensic accountant. All right, and we also have universities offering accounting courses. Now, I'm from Asia Pacific University. We have specialism in forensic accountants. Okay, we also there are universities like UITM. They also offer forensic accounting. There are universities offering forensic accounting courses where you can go in. Or you can do for accounting course, and then there are masters in forensic accounting courses. All right, or there are also papers like fraud, certified fraud examiners paper. So the most important thing that we need in a forensic accountant is experience. All right, my students who studied forensic accounting with me, all right, when they graduated, they first be an auditor first. Okay, it's advisable for them to be an auditor for 1 year. They be an auditor, and they learn about the audit processes, how audit work. Then they move on to the ladder, and they become a forensic accountant. And where does a forensic accountant work? Everywhere. We have like how auditors work in audit firms. All right, forensic accountant work in an audit firm too. Nowadays, PwC, all these audit firm, they have forensic department under them. Okay, under assurance, and they have forensic department. So you can EY, Ernst and Young Malaysia. All right, EY got so many branches, right? So EY has a forensic department. So you can work as a forensic accountant. External, okay, you can be an external forensic accountant, or you can actually work in an organization. All right, the organization have a fraud department, so you can work inside as an internal fraud investigator. So you have few options. You can go to one, maybe a bank, you go to an Affin bank. The Affin bank has a fraud department, so you be a fraud investigator in the bank itself. Or you want to be an external forensic accountant, also can. In countries like UK and US, forensic accountants do work freelance, because their competence is really needed. The court really needs their opinion, because when you become a forensic accountant with more experience, your analysis, your opinion matters. So they also work freelance. Okay, we need accounting knowledge to detect fraud. Ratio analysis that you guys do, horizontal analysis, vertical analysis, normal ratio, analysis. These are some of the techniques that forensic accountant actually use to also investigate fraud. All right. All right, thank you. Guys, any other questions from the floor? Anyone? And forensic accounting.
Miss Kavitha,
Yes,
I have a
yes.
question.
Yeah.
What can be done to help organizations know how important it is to engage forensic accountants?
How, what
How to
is,
let the organization
how
very
to
crucial
let
that
the
we do engage.
organization know? Okay. Definitely it goes back to awareness. Okay, I feel that sometimes organization, especially small organization, they are always in the rejection mood that fraud won't happen to them, right? So what we can do is definitely to create awareness. We can tell them that look, we can give them training. All right, and we can give awareness in the sense of look, fraud is happening and you should be aware, even though currently it's pandemic, and We believe that if it's impossible, since everyone working from home, fraud will not be happening. Again, I will stress that awareness, we need to get to them, all right? We need to explain to them, or maybe what we can do is, there are so many cases, fraud cases, which already been investigated. We can share with them all these cases and say, look, based on the statistic, fraud is happening and you should be aware of it. So I think end of the day, it goes back to awareness. Thank you. And guys, by the way, actually I forgot to mention to you guys just now. As forensic accountants, currently we since we are talking about fraud preventions and all that, forensic accountant, we don't only do our investigation manually, guys. We also have a lot of softwares to help us. Okay, we have so many softwares application. Famous one that I can think of now, Encase. No, you can Google up ENCASE and also forensic toolkit FTK. We can just Google them up, all right? So these are some of the softwares that we can use to detect and investigate fraud. So you know how this software works. At the end of the day, you still need an accountant to analyze it, because how the software work, for example, you key in all, you don't have to key in, you copy paste all the data in the software. So nowadays, all company using UBS or SQL and anything, extract the data, put in the software, let the software run. The software will run, all right, and the software will come up with analysis like in January, how much purchases has been done from supplier A, in February, how much purchases, you know. So all based of all the purchases, they will analyze, okay, purchases from vendor number one is always high. So forensic accountant from there, by using the software, they will investigate why the purchases for vendor number A is high, you know. So we have the help of software currently with technology and all that. We have the help of softwares to actually investigate fraud. But surprisingly, organizations, they don't actually engage in too many, you know, now, you know, but usually people say that fraud can be prevented. This is a technology world, you know, we have AI, we have technology. With the technology, we can prevent fraud. But survey says that 59% of organizations are not aware of these technologies, and they have no training on this technology. So we are not in a state where we can rely on technology to prevent fraud. Okay, so it is very important to be aware of it. Okay, maybe perhaps larger organizations, but still they need the insights of a forensic accountant to read the softwares and also to analyze the, you know, sometimes when you have technology, you have to feed data in the technology. So what to feed, you know, what are the information to be fed into? We need a forensic accountant to do it. All right. Some of the small companies reject to engage an external forensic accountant is due to cost. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The cost could be very expensive, not say very expensive, but we can always, you know, forensic accountant, there are few types of work we do. Sometimes we go for prevention, sometimes we go for comprehensive analysis. You know, when you go for a medical checkup, some can be very expensive, some can be quite basic. So you can choose, you know, or you can just consult a forensic accountant, all right? So we can choose. Larger organization, more headcount, small risk of fraud, correct? When you have a larger organization, there will be more headcounts, more risk of fraud. So larger organization, they can afford to come up with a more comprehensive prevention plan for the organizations. Okay. And then sometimes we tend to think that a larger organization, they definitely will have a very good prevention mechanism. See, again, sometimes they have this fraud prevention mechanism, but it is not being monitored. Sometimes the companies, right, there are few cases where companies have a very good internal control mechanism, but it has been already broken into, so we won't know it until we check it. Should fresh graduate pursue a master's in forensic accounting before proceeding to work in the auditing field? Yes, they can. Again, guys, it's what you want to do. When you want to be a forensic accountant, if you've already decided, a master's in forensic accounting would always be a good choice, you know. You can do both, you know. If you can work as an auditor and you can also do masters. But personally, sometimes I will advise the students to, you know, finish up your education, in the sense of once you finish your degree, go for the masters in forensic accounting. Then once you complete it, You work as an audit, because sometimes when you're studying, you have the momentum to finish up, right? So you finish it up, then directly you can go to audit. I have few students who go for audit for 6 months, then they do masters. And it is again individual choice, but masters is always a good option. And guys, and I also had a student, forensic accounting student. She did masters, and is under Police Department of Malaysia. So forensic accounting is like, it's an investigation, so police also need to investigate documents and all that. So we have opportunity to work as an external forensic accountant in audit firms. We can work internally in banks, in any organization. We can work with the authority like police, immigration. So our job scope is actually huge. It's a very very growing, I mean, I would say it is a demanding career. It's a growing career compared to, it's a very growing career. Any other question, guys? Okay. Could you highlight on forensics role in dealing with external fraud such as phishing and scam? All right. See, as a forensic accountant, all right, definitely we prevent fraud and we investigate fraud. Okay. But when come to external fraud scams and all that, we will investigate it. But this kind of scam, we definitely need some IT background. So some forensic accountant, what we do, we will engage in IT team, all right, especially when we are external forensic accountant, they will have an IT team with them. So we engage with them, all right. So the IT team will be the digging, all right. They will the one with the tracing, the scams and all that. And our work will be to analyzing it. So we work together with the IT team so that we can investigate them. So we definitely for phishing and scams, we can't do it alone. So we work together with the IT team. Let them do the tracing, let them go trace and find the main person, and we will analyze it, and we will have the terms of types of evidence to be presented in court. All right. And how would you describe the demand for forensic accounting in Malaysia? My experience, I will say the demand is growing, okay, because I teach students, all right. I teach in the area of forensic accountant for quite very long, okay. Back in 2013, maybe, I can't remember, it was very new, all right. Students was like, miss, this field, I can't find it anywhere. But now the demand of forensic accounting is huge, because people are trying, people now they understand that, every organization is exposed to fraud, and they know that forensic accountant, usually we have this mindset that, look, forensic accountant, just call them when there is a fraud. Okay, but now the mindset has changed. Forensic accountant, we need them to investigate, to prevent fraud. And we deal with a lot of cases. We deal with insurance cases, we deal with matrimony cases, matrimony cases. We deal with, so many, like a damage claim cases. Like, let's say supplier cheated to you, and then you want to file a case on the supplier. You want to know how much you can damage, you can claim in the court. We need a forensic accountant to compute the damages. So the demand for forensic accounting has been increasing, because everyone now, they are aware that the role, the scope of forensic accounting is now huge. Okay. Is it difficult for Malaysian forensic accountant to pursue a forensic accountant career outside Malaysia? No, it is not, because certified fraud examiner papers are actually worldwide recognized. We have Malaysian chapter, and it is an international paper. So once you do a forensic accounting course, like maybe you choose to do a degree in forensic accounting, a master's in forensic accounting, you can do additional paper like certified fraud examiner papers, and it's easy for you to pursue your career outside Malaysia, because it is like recognized outside Malaysia also. So you don't have to worry about that. And countries, most countries like outside Malaysia, the awareness, the reach of the career forensic accounting is already there. So it's a very, very growing, and again, very, very interesting career to look into. Career in important field to look into. All right. Any other question, guys? Now we can talk about anything. So anything you want to ask me? Thanks. I think some of you feel like to speak too fast, right?
I have one question. I just want to ask about entry bribery. Is
Yeah.
it part of the fraud prevention way?
Wait.
Yeah,
In Malaysia, we do have anti-bribery commission, MACC,
yeah.
Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission. See, as forensic accountant, we can work under MACC. And see, when it comes to corruption cases, right, our role is we investigate the corruption, all right, and our
Mhm.
role is end of the day, anything we investigate we have to report back to the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Department. So either we will be working hands on hands together with the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Department, or we
Mhm.
work independently and we report back to MACC. And again,
Okay.
corruption, there are few. There are things like bribery, some is extortion. Extortion, then you have to directly deal with police department. So it depends on the nature of the corruption case we work. But most of the cases, when it comes to larger organization, we work together with MACC.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alright. Roughly how much does it cost to engage a forensic accountant? Very subjective, I can't directly answer this question. It's very subjective because it depends on the nature of the service and every firm is different, that it will be conflict of interest and so I can't directly answer that. But when you go to the industry, you will see that. Okay. How many years of audit experience How many years of audit experience would you say is required for us to become forensic accountant? I will answer this question based on my previous students, my alumni experience. Some said 1 year, some was in audit for 6 months, because they had an internship for 6 months, then they went for audit 6 months and they move up to tier to forensic accountant. It is not like, audit is better, forensic accounting is better. It's nothing like that. Audit is a field, forensic accounting is a field. But to be a forensic accountant, you need audit knowledge. So some students, they are purely interested in audit, so they will be in audit because they like the audit experience. Some students, they like to be under investigation, they like to investigate, they like to write a report, they like to do observation, surveillance, all right. So from audit, they gain the experience of audit and they move to forensic and they have to learn more in forensic. Usually these students, they have to work under a senior for few years or work under a senior for few projects, then they can be a lead forensic accountant. So it works that way. So sometimes it sounds like, you need to be a forensic accountant. It's like there's no like superseding. Audit is a field and forensic accounting is a field. Some of them, they are more interested in audit because they like the nature of audit. Auditing is something like checking whether the company's records are good. For some of them, they like forensics because they like to investigate. So audit experience, you need to have enough experience to know what is an audit, all right, then you can say that I'm interested in forensic and you can jump to forensic department, you can do that. Okay. So both of these fields are, they do a different job. Auditors do a different job, forensic accountants, they do a different job. So different area, different types of natures of work. So that's how the audit experience comes in. Do forensic accountant get higher pay than auditor? This again, I think that explanation just now answers this question. I won't say that way, okay, because both of them do their work professionally. Okay, your pay depends on your experience, your pay depends on the amount of work you do, how vigilant you are in your work, how active in your work. Okay, so I won't say that no, you are a forensic accountant, you get higher pay. It doesn't work that way. You need your experience, your qualifications, the amount of cases you deal with. Sometimes forensic accountants, they become better with experience. So we won't sum it up that way, that forensic accountants get higher pay. We won't do that. They get, it depends on experience and the work that you do.
Yes, I have quite one question, Azam. Yeah,
Yes.
I
Okay,
just want to ask any certification for this forensic account in Malaysia.
yes, we have certification. Recently I think they have this ACFE Certified Fraud Examiner. All right, we have
Okay.
that certification. You can try to apply that, but not easy. Okay, certificate
Mm-hmm.
to get the CFE, you need to have some ideas on fraud and some. You have to go for some classes online, if I'm not mistaken, or you can go directly for courses like forensic accounting degree courses. You can do that, or you can do masters in forensic accounting. You have few options. Degree, you can go for degree in forensic accounting. You can go for masters, or you can go for the CFE papers.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. What happens if fraud is caused by the auditor? Happened previously. I don't know whether you guys remember Enron. Okay, Enron cases is a world famous case. I think if you guys do corporate governance, you remember Enron. So auditor was involved, right? So if auditors were involved, then when the forensic accountant do the investigation in their audit report, in their forensic report, they will mention that this has been highlighted to the auditor didn't take action. So there are cases where in not in Malaysia, but in cases like Enron, the auditors were also involved, and when the forensic accountant do investigation, they include that in the report. Okay, no comment about 1MDB. I can't comment on that. I'm sorry, Mr. David. Okay, very sensitive to comment about 1MDB. But if an auditor is involved, forensic accountant will definitely, ethically, they will report that in their report. What are the prime characteristics needed in a person wanting to pursue a course or career in forensic accountant? Well, skeptical, I would say. A forensic accountant must be always skeptical. Skeptical in the sense of they must always you know I want to know what happened. Okay, this number is not correct. What could have happened? Because forensic accountant, right? uh when they investigate, what happens is clients will tell them all the symptoms. All right, so when clients tell them all the symptoms, they have to be skeptical. What could have happened? No, they have to come up with a hypothesis of what could have happened, and then only they can find physical evidence relating to it. So one skill, being very skeptical, and communication, because they have to present their findings in the court. So they have to be good in report writing, but that comes with experience. Okay, and other knowledge like accounting, criminology is also very important in the sense of reading people's intention, understanding how a crime is committed, litigation. All right, so these are knowledge. But prime characteristics, I would say skeptical. And that's one thing, always in a very question mind, like why this could have happened. They also should be someone who can question and be able to analyze the question. They have to be very critical about the analysis. Always be able to think out of the box. That when, because answers for the forensic cases won't directly be in front of us. It will be everywhere. So we have to be very skeptical. Would fintech assist in detecting fraud? Financial technology, yes, because fintech is a very general term. All right. Financial technology, when you learn about it, okay, technology can assist in detecting fraud, because as I mentioned, now we have a lot of softwares, we have a lot of application. So financial technology, fintech, definitely a tool. When you learn about it, you can embed it and you can able to assist in detecting fraud. So like I said just now, I give you the example of Benford law. Benford law is by using a simple Excel sheet, you drag the number and you detect fraud. So that it will take some time. Okay, but now with the technological world, with digital tool, with the help of financial technology, we have so many other tools. So with the fintech, with the knowledge fintech, it will be easier for a forensic accountant to detect the fraud. But for that, the forensic accountant should have some idea about fintech, what this technology is all about. Okay, so definitely, yes, it will help to assist in detecting fraud. Any other question, guys? You're welcome, David. Any other questions?
Miss Kavitha?
Yes, Tulsi?
Okay, so in one of the slides earlier during your presentation, you mentioned that some clients would not choose to report the fraud.
Yeah.
Why is it so?
Because some clients, right, they feel that if they report the fraud, the cases will go to the court. So once your case go to the court, right, they feel that their reputation is tarnished. They feel that, look, I bring the case to court, so they feel that reputation wise it is very it's a bad reputation for them. And some of them, they feel that going for a court case is costly. You have to pay a lawyer maybe, and some logistic expenses involved. So could be because of cost, it could be because they don't want to take into account the extra burden, and most of them don't want to report it because of their reputation. But we have to break this. We have to ensure that frauds are reported, because when one fraud is not reported, it means you are motivating another employee to also commit fraud. They will feel that, hey, look, this man took 1 million and nothing happened to him, and he just sacked, and I should also do the same. So it is very, I would say, not healthy. So I understand for some people, they are worried about the reputation, but again, there are so many mechanisms out of court dispute resolution that we can opt into, so that they can report. It's very important to report the fraud. Okay. Which industry needs forensic accounting? All industries. Okay. Definitely forensic accountants, we are from the accounting background, but all the industry, manufacturing industry, service sector, what else industry we have? Research industry, food industry, every industry. Because every industry deals with money, every industry deals with things, every industry have employees working for them. So forensic accountant is a field where we serve all types of industry. Like how audit, all companies need audit. Definitely listed company is a statutory requirement. Small company, they can choose to be audited, but again, they will go for an audit because they want to ensure their statements are fair and true and fair, sorry. So like that, all companies, all industry need a forensic accountant. They can do like a medical checkup, something like that, a checkup on the industry. All right. Any other questions from the floor? Anyone? Okay, actually my next slide is question slide. Q&A. We are already in Q&A. Any other questions? Anything you guys want to discuss with me? Anything I can help? Anything? No?
Miss Kavitha, one more question.
Yeah?
Well, based on your experiences
Okay.
or based on things that you've heard, what happens to the fraudsters once they are proven that they are the fraudsters?
Okay. Based on my experiences, some fraudster, they have to pay like because the cases that I experienced before were mostly on in the terms what settlement agreements. All right, they have to settle some money. I have few cases where they go to the court, but then their punishment or their verdict were mostly into settlement agreements that they have to give, like like a civil litigation, right? So when it comes to civil litigation, it's not jail term or anything. I didn't deal with any corruption cases or money laundering before, so it's more into settlement agreements or a verdict in terms where the victim is awarded some money, something like that. But if it
Right,
is
thank
a
you.
court case, definitely, if you can prove that the victim is really under a loss, then the perpetrator will need to give the demand, what is the demanded by the victim, lah. Something like that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, all
Due
right.
to time constraint, ladies and gentlemen, we will have one last question from the floor. Is there any other question?
Any question, guys? Okay, I think my slide is here. Anything I can help you guys with?
Miss Kavitha, how much
Yeah.
roughly does this program cost? Let's say, there's this student who wants to enroll into
Okay.
forensic accounting program. How
Mm-hmm.
much does the student
I
have
mean
to pay in terms
degree
of,
in forensic
from the
accounting?
enrollment up to the graduation? Mhm. the program fee.
You mean the degree in the forensic accounting course, is it?
Yeah, degree.
Okay, I am really not so sure about the fees. Maybe I can't remember. 17. Please check the website. I really can't remember the fee structure. So you can check on the website because there are few universities offering it, right? So you can go to the university website, or you can directly go to the, I mean, you can just directly Google the website up, right? You can check the fees, but I can't directly recall the exact amount of it.
I see. Roughly about 70 to 80K.
Pardon?
Roughly about 70 to 80K, is it? You
70,
said earlier?
should be. You can
All
Google
right.
it up, yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
so
yes, so yeah, it's roughly
I
about
don't see
70
any
to
more
80.
question.
You guys can choose accounting
Okay.
course and specialized in forensic accounting. That will be a good thing to do.
All right, so I don't see any more questions. Thank you very much, Ms. Kavitha, for the very
Thank
informative
you.
and enlightening talk. I must say that I've learned a lot of things out of this talk today.
Thank
And
you.
your slides were also very comprehensive. And we were able to get this idea of what forensic accounting is all about and what the forensic accountants do as a whole. So thank you for that.
No problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for our group photo. So we
Yeah.
appreciate it if everyone can kindly turn on your cameras and be part of the group photo.
You know, my students are always camera shy too, and I don't know why.
I know. No, our students are fine. No, you can see many UTAR students, they'll be
Ah,
turning on their cameras in a bit.
very good.
Guys, don't disappoint me.
I
Well,
can
hi,
see
Miss
some
Tan.
students here.
Okay. Yes, I mean, alternatively, you can also, choose to show any positive reaction from the emojis, like a thumbs up or a smiley face. Yeah. Okay, so if it's convenient for you, please turn on the camera because it will really be nice to take this whole group photo. I'll give you another minute. Okay, or reaction maybe like a thumbs up, a smiley face. Hi, Mr. Tamil. Okay, all right. So I think that is all. Okay. Thank you, Jeffan, for joining us.
Maybe give them a couple minutes more to switch on their videos. Some of them may have to go adjust their hair and things.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi guys, nice to see you all.
Account. I interested for this topic today. Very interesting.
Oh,
Very
thank
interesting.
you.
Thank you for giving your insight.
Oh, thank you for your time.
Yeah. Mr. Lionel, thank you, Mr. Lionel.
Okay. All right. I think the first screen is full. Okay. So in 3, 2, 1, everybody say cheese. Okay. 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 Right. Okay. Right. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. So thank you again, everyone. That marks the end of our talk session for today. We apologize for any shortcomings from our side. We hope to see you again in the upcoming webinars and talk sessions.
Yeah.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.